This is PJNET.TV, and this is my perspective and comments. In this video segment of My Perspective and Comments, we cover politics, society here and abroad, and the events of the day that are shaping our nation. PJNET.TV, my perspective and comment, coming to you with a worldview, one nation under God.
Hello and welcome to My Perspective and Comments. And another busy, hectic week that we've seen in the news here. And I'd like to start out with, once again, COVID-19, Wuhan virus, China virus, and what's been taking place in the United States. We're seeing still some states that are seeing high infection rates amongst the younger 15, 18, 20s, low 30s. And that pretty obvious that they are socially mingling, and there are more things that are opening up where they can get out and socialize. But again, the death rates are not spiking, and the sky is not falling when it comes to that. Here in New York, the death rate is definitely is on the very low ebb, and infection rates are under control. Folks, I just want to tell you here, I don't know if you heard, but I guess they had to rush Andy Cuomo, governor of New York. They had to rush him to the emergency room, I guess, because I guess what happened is, I think what they're telling us is that he threw out his shoulder. He's been so busy patting himself on the back for such a great job that he's done in this COVID over the last 5 months, that I guess he threw out his shoulder. Just kidding, folks. But you see the media, and you see Andy Cuomo sounding like he's got all the answers until it's brought to his attention and brought to America's attention that it's his orders that infected the nursing homes, and that's why New York is the epicenter for deaths in the world, because of what he crammed down and dictated to the nursing homes that they had to take and infected COVID patients into the nursing home. So we see New York, he's busy touting what he's been doing, but we still have movie theaters, we still have gyms that are closed, and he still has his boot on many businesses still in this state. And he's got the nerve to hold out his hand and want to demand that the federal government give New York some help. Well, how about Governor Cuomo helping himself and opening up the rest of these businesses? Because I'm hearing every week there are businesses that are saying, I need to open up. The gyms especially, and lawsuits are coming out against the governor and New York for keeping these businesses in a lockdown state when they really should be open. You want to generate revenue, then Governor Cuomo needs to open up his businesses so that he can start generating more revenue. Instead of holding out his hand, he should be opening up the rest of this state, and to get ourselves on sure footing. I'd like to talk about what we've seen. If you've watched any of the news, and the anarchy and the riots and the burning that's been taking place there in Portland. it appears that the governor has come up with some agreement here with, I guess she's been working with Mike Pence and the administration about resolving this problem and doing her job and doing what's necessary to quell the violence that's taking place by these terrorists in Portland. So Oregon Governor Kate Brown announced Wednesday, I believe it was, her discussions with Mike Pence, and she's going to, as there's a drawdown when she has her state police she's going to deploy the Oregon State Police to take over and to keep the courthouses and the federal buildings from getting burned and damaged. And at this point, the Trump administration is going to keep the federal forces there, but they won't be on the streets, and they're going to play a wait and see if the state police can quell and handle the anarchy that's taking place there in Portland. So folks, we'll wait and see how that all plays out. But talking about the anarchy that's taking place in the streets, and people are getting concerned. A lot of people are fearful right now. But I want to highlight a sheriff in Clay County in Florida, in the Jacksonville, Florida, Daryl Daniels, and he had something or has something to say, and it came in a warning to those that want to, like the Black Lives Matter and Antifa, who think that they're going to come in his county, in Clay County, and bring that anarchy to his residents. And he's already said that if need be, if there's that type of large crowds and that are looking to hurt people and destroy property and burn and loot, steal, that he's going to deputize all the law-abiding gun owners in his county and deputize them to quell any mess that happens in his county. And I say here to that. When you talk about the sheriff's department, they're right there. They're one of the closest law enforcement, directly close to the people. So that's the warning, and I bring that up, folks, because we've been hearing that some of these anarchists and that's been in the streets have been threatening to take that same fierce that anarchy and the crime and burning and looting and mayhem to the suburbs. And here's one county sheriff that says, we're not going to have none of that. And I think if it ever came down to that, and folks, you see the lawlessness that's been taking place in some of these cities like Seattle and Portland and other DC, that's what the Second Amendment was all about. Was if society breaks down, there is some protections to protect you and your family. And what's been taking place here, I would have never thought would have happened, but we see this crime wave, and the left that has basically said, hey, we're not going to say anything. If you want to riot and loot and hurt people, hey, all hands off. And now you have police chiefs calling and telling the community in some of these left liberal cities, you're going to have to fend for yourself, because the council and the mayors have told us to stand down. So don't expect the police to come and help. And that's the message that's been that's coming from some police officers or police chiefs regarding policing in certain neighborhoods or certain cities. More to come, folks. This isn't going to end until law and order. And you know, I say to President Trump, whatever it takes to stop this violence, whatever it takes, it should be the cry. And but you've got these liberal governors and mayors that are purposely saying, you know, telling their police departments to stand down. And we all know that it's political, and they think that they can have crime in the street, constant agitation, and this is somehow going to benefit them in November. But folks, you know, America is, I don't believe, has gone over the cliff of insanity to know who is the one that's causing this and allowing this to take place. And a prime example of this is, I don't know if any of you watched any of the highlights, but over the last a day or two here, we saw an unhinged left when they had A.G. Barr had come forward to the House, and what despicable scene that was, where they didn't really want to hear from A.G. Barr. All they wanted to do was call him this, call him that, a racist, a criminal, President Trump's lackey, and they didn't want anything but to have a sound bite. And what did it sound like from those left Democrats like Nadler? It sounded like what we see in the streets of Portland or Seattle, unhinged people, and they don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear their own truth, and to condemn A.G. Barr, and that's all that was. They weren't looking to and blame him for everything, all the ills that's been taking place in the United States. A despicable display, and Barr basically said, well, because he started to explain a question, and they said, order, my time, I needed to recall my time, and basically they said, Barr, we don't want to hear from you. We want to lob our accusations, and you're just going to take it. And basically what we saw here was the Democrats trying to have their sound bite of the day all day long. And A.G. Barr was the target. I want to talk about, here we go again, folks, the Supreme Court. And Chief Justice Roberts kicked the Christians in the head again. And what came before the Supreme Court was the Nevada church in Nevada, the Calvary Chapel in Dayton Valley, in Dayton, Nevada, basically is suing the governor of the state of Nevada for, and that's Governor Steve Sononiak. And what they are charging is, in that state, they have a that the church can only have 50 a 50-person limit to their churches. But what has pushed that lawsuit is that they have businesses like the casinos, like the restaurants, even strip joints have more people that are coming to those establishments, and the church, the church sued for their First Amendment rights, and Justice Roberts sided with the liberal side again. You had Justice Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, Brett Kavanaugh, and you had Neil Gorsuch that were on the dissent. And Neil Gorsuch wrote the dissent. And what he said is that this was absolutely wrong. This was taking, you had these other businesses that were able to open up in larger numbers, but that there was discrimination against this church. And Justice Roberts said that the Constitution does not permit Nevada favor over the Caesar's palace over Calvary Chapel. And that's basically what the left side of the court and Chief Justice Roberts were saying, is they were giving more latitude, more leeway, more freedom to these businesses, casinos and restaurants, bars, than they were to Calvary Chapel. But once again, the liberal side of the court, and at this point, Justice Roberts, I guess you'd have to put him in that category as the liberal side of that court, and they dashed a blow against the Christians in that ruling. So we're very disappointing of what we've been seeing coming out of the Supreme Court as of late. And we'll be keeping an eye open for some more rulings that are coming down here in the near future, because there are some more cases out there that will be of interest to all of us. I'd like to talk about masks or no masks, and that's been the subject in the United States right now. They are pushing masks big time, and the jury is out. The jury is not out. In fact, there's been no studies. They have had studies in the past here with the Corona one, and the consensus was that from the professionals, from the medical, that the masks aren't that effective. In fact, we heard early on here, February, that masks weren't needed. And now we've got this whole campaign that everybody's got to be masked up, and you can't, you've got some of these people that are saying you need to be masked in your own home. So there is a study right out now, and the conclusions, I believe, are going to be coming out this month or maybe next month. And it's from Denmark. And I'll give you a clue. Right now, as of, I think the last 2 weeks, maybe the last month, Denmark has already said, so this might be an indication of what their findings are, that you don't need to be wearing masks. And that's coming from Denmark. Also, Sweden is another one that has not been forcing masks. Now, they are recommending that when you're in close quarters, like mass transit, especially for Sweden, and very close, very close quarters, that they would recommend a mask. Or if you're actually sick, then they would recommend a mask. And that, hey, it makes sense. And we do that normally in flu season. If I see somebody that's coughing and really looks sick, I'll social distance. I'm going to distance because I don't want to get the influenza if I don't have to. So normally we've been doing that anyway through the years. If you know someone's sick, then you keep your distance. And that's what they're saying over in Sweden and Denmark and all the countries in that area, that they're not forcing masks on their residents, and they have been having some positive results. And what they're finding right now, folks, is that a lot of these countries that did the real lockdown, like Israel is one. And Israel has been going through 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these where they've had to shut down the country, open it back up, shut it down again, open it back up. So, even with all these lockdowns where everybody was hidden away, they're still dealing with lockdowns. And right now, this nation, and we'll see, as I mentioned before, about getting our schools open. That's going to be pivotal. That's going to be pivotal, because that is tied to getting everybody in the workforce back. I mean, if you can't get our children back to school, then that means that the parents are going to have to figure out a way where one of the parents may need to stay home and not be able to get working, or to find daycare. And that's been an issue right now with in this country, is finding daycare, because of what's been taking place in the need for these facilities, daycare centers, to the capacity right now is overwhelming, and there's not enough daycare centers to be able to handle the extra activity of children that are going to need to have that care. So I believe that what needs to be done is freedom. And yes, if you trust your residents, when it comes to, if you're on a subway system or if you're in closed quarters, then recommend masks be worn. And like in South Dakota, Governor Noem, trusting her people to do the right thing. Give the information and trust your people to do the right thing. And that should be the way to govern. But right now we see places like California and New York, and Andy Cuomo's attitude is, you will comply. And that seems to be the attitude. It's cram down government from the top, and you're going to do what we tell you to do. Once again, the power grab that I had been warning about early on, that when they get this power and the epidemic is all over with, will those powers be relinquished? And history shows that once they get power, it's going to be very difficult. It will be a fight to get our freedoms totally back to where these governors and mayors and the edicts that they've all been racking up and adding up are withdrawn. So we'll keep an eye on this, folks. We're in the middle of this. Some states are doing better than others. And again, the one solution that we need to keep in mind, again, is that herd immunity. Because although we've been hearing some promising medicines, possible vaccines, that does not mean that those vaccines are going to be ready before the end of the year or even into next year. And we hear a lot of optimism, but that doesn't mean that when it comes right down to getting something on the pharmacy shelves, if that's really going to happen. And again, we've been hearing this week has been a big week about hydroxychloroquine as being more and more evidence, and doctors that are coming forward that have been treating their patients with hydroxychloroquine giving rave reviews. In fact, we had a group of doctors that had come out that had produced a video, and social media, Facebook and Twitter and others pulled it because they didn't like what they were hearing. So, and again, talking about social media and big tech, they were on the hot seat this week, and some of those very questions were asked. In fact, when they pulled the video, also Donald Trump Jr. had retweeted it, and they suspended his account. So these, as we've talked before, you don't like to have the government come in and regulate this and regulate that, but something has to be done to at least allow, if they're going to discriminate against these doctors. I mean, these are doctors, a group of doctors. They have patients, they're treating patients, and they're trying to bring another conclusion. And that's how the left works. They don't want to hear another conclusion, like we saw with A.G. Barr. They don't want to hear that. It's going to be our way, and hydroxychloroquine is something that Trump had brought up and encouraged. And once he did that, then it turned political, and it had to be bad. It had to be defective, and it's no good. But we've got doctor after doctor after doctor that have some good reports on hydroxychloroquine. So, and I guess I think Thursday, this past Thursday, Governor DeWine in Ohio was banning hydroxychloroquine, and he quickly reversed course, and now he's allowing that in his state to be offered as a therapeutic for his residents. We'll keep an eye on that, folks. We're still in the middle here of this COVID, and a lot of things have been going on. And we'll be talking more about the schools and that there we see again a political aspect of what's taking place. Teachers' unions seem to be saying, well, no, we don't know if we want to, have our teachers in class. And there's a mixed bag there. A lot of teachers, they want to get back to their students, but there's also a political aspect in the teachers' union that want to try and come up with all these demands before they'll let their teachers come through. So we'll keep an eye on this. A lot of things happening in different states. We're seeing some states that have more freedom and that are trusting their people, and those seem to be the states that are doing better, and their residents are doing better. And it all comes down to there's consequences to these lockdowns, and we're starting to hear from some physicians, even the CDC had talked about, look, there's some unintended consequences like suicides, like people missing illnesses because they weren't going in and getting examined, and child abuse, and a lot of areas that are negative to the health of people because of this total lockdown in many situations. So we'll be keeping an eye on in the next couple of weeks. And again, we have a election that's coming up with, and it's the countdown is here. What, 3 months? There's a lot to a lot to keep our eyes on, folks. And Joe Biden, I guess we're going to hear next week who the running mate is. And I'd like to say that if we roll back the tape early on, I believe yours truly had brought, and it seems to be the word is out that Kamala Harris might be Joe's running mate. So stay tuned. Next week we'll hear what old Joe, if he knows where he's actually at. From time to time, he's having a problem keeping it together. He goes to these goes to an event, and he doesn't even know where he's at. So problematic. I'm hoping that these debates, that they get 2 or 3 debates in, because I think really when you look at President Trump and Vice President, ex-Vice President Biden, there'll be a stark difference in competency when Joe Biden is asked some tough questions, and it seems like every outing, every event he has, there's a mind drain or a mind bobble every time. So we'll keep an eye on things, folks. A lot is still that's been happening. Unrest in our country is not going away any too soon, and we'll see how some of these governors and mayors are going to get control of their city, and the crime rate that seems to be going up across our nation. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. I'd like us to right now to shift gears, and I'd like us to take a look at Scripture today, and it will be in Ephesians. But I'd like to first talk about God's love for you and I, and when we realize that before we came to Christ, we were running with Satan. We were in that camp, and we were lost in sin. We were against God. But God's love for you and I, He wanted to make a way. He has made a way for you and I. Even though we were enemies of God, God's love, He wanted to bring you and I, even in the state we were in, He wanted to bring you into His family. He wanted to bring me into His family. And He made a way, and that was through His Son Jesus. Even though we were trespassing against Him and enemies of Him, He loved us, and He wanted to save us. So I'd like to have us take a look at a scripture in in Ephesians chapter 2, and we'll start out with verses 1 and 2, and we'll finish in verses 4 and 5. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 1. And you were made alive, who were dead in trespasses and sin, in which you were once walking according to a course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who works in the sons of disobedience. Verse 4. But God, who is rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us. Verse 5. Even when we were dead in trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. And again, folks, I'd like us to really just reflect on, even in our lost state, even though we were running with Satan, God loved us. He wanted to make a way to bring you and I into his family, and he did. But to think of that, God loved us so much. You know, God can't look at sin, but through his son Jesus, he now sees us white as snow. But sin sickens God, but he wanted to bring you and I into fellowship with him. And he accomplished, even though we were lost, even though we were running with Satan, God loved us and wanted to make a way to bring you and I into his family. So grateful that God made a way for you and I. That love that we just, you think we just can't understand, but he made that way. And when you think of what Christ did, what he went through on that cross at Calvary, taking your sins, taking my sins, taking all that disobedience and that filth and degradation onto himself. And the scriptures tells us that he became sin for you and I, taking the sins of the world, taking the sins of those that before, those that are coming, that haven't been born yet, onto himself. The sins of the generations, Christ making a way, taking the sins of the whole world upon him. Love. God loved us so much that he gave us his son to be sin in our place. So we see God's mercy, that mercy that was showed to you and I. God making a way, God showing his great love and mercy for you and I. And we just, folks, we just can rejoice in God bringing us into his family. And that family is an eternal family. When he comes again for his bride, his church, we will be spending eternity in God's family, because he made a way through his son Jesus for you and I. So we can rejoice today when we look around and what we've been talking about over the last month. Things could look very dire and stressful when we see of the anarchy and the anger and the sin that's running rampant in our streets today. We could get discouraged, but no, folks, realizing that God loves those that may be out doing those things. They're lost. They're dead in their trespasses, but God made a way for them. And I pray that there is a revival that takes place in our nation, throughout the world, that people begin to realize that there's another way, that there's one who came to save them. Even in their lost state, God loves them and has made a way for them. So we keep our nation in prayer. We keep those around the world in prayer, knowing that God's coming again. And no matter what the situation, what the dire situation a person is in, he has that opportunity to be redeemed unto God through his son Jesus. we can take hope in that. And those that we come in contact with throughout our travels, God, if lays someone on your heart, yes, the good news is, even though you've messed up, even though you're fallen, even though you're on a path away from God, He wants to bring you into His family. He wants to save you, and His love and grace for you, He'll save. Just give Him your heart. Trust in the provision that He made through Jesus Christ, and you will be saved. And that's the good news, is that no one no one will be lost forever if they turn from their path and turn to the Lord through Jesus Christ. So we have hope, and we need to spread that hope to the people that we come in contact with. And that's my perspective and comments.